So hello everyone, and welcome to this mindfulness webinar that I'm hosting with my friend Kyle Shea. I'm going to do a bit of a introduction, both of us, in a bit, but I just wanted to start by saying, especially for those of you who will be watching this on the replay, who maybe I haven't met yet, I'm Brenda Walton, and I'm the creator of the Worthy program. And I'm co-hosting this webinar with Kyle Shea. We both absolutely love supporting people who are motivated to learn about the importance of mindfulness and gaining clarity and understanding around the powerful benefits that mindfulness can have in our everyday life and overall success. So I'll start and I'll do a bit of a introduction of myself, give you a bit more information, then I'll invite Kyle to do his, share a little bit of information about himself with us. So I have been trained in a number of different techniques, but I began to understand and really appreciate what mindfulness means to my life about 10 years ago. So I started my own personal development journey, became certified to deliver a number of different training programs. And through all of that process, it evolved what is now my Worthy program. And mindfulness and being present is such an integral part of my Worthy program, and increasing overall self-confidence. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the webinar, but it's been a very interesting and wonderful journey that I've been on, and I'm always happy to continue. So Kyle, why don't you say hi to everybody and tell them a little bit about yourself, so especially for those folks who are watching on the replay who maybe have not met you yet.
There we go.
There.
Perfect. It was the anticipation. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Brenda. And as Brenda said, we're friends through a training that we both undertook together about a year ago. And I think, yeah, we really connected over mindfulness and over growth and personal and professional development. And that's kind of what we're both out for in the world. I have a personal and professional development coaching practice where I work with people to, from a mindfulness lens, really get clear on what's important to them, how it actually shows up in their life, and what can you do about that. So mindfulness to me is the foundation really for everything. It's not the cure-all for everything, not the panacea for everything in life, but it's certainly a starting point. And I came across mindfulness and meditation about 3 years ago. I had just finished doing a bit of traveling, my first time sort of traveling abroad, broke up with my girlfriend at the time, and found myself kind of, I had a lot of space. I had a sort of blank slate to sort of create what I wanted for my life. And I was preparing for grad school at the time as well. So I found a lot of curiosity into really understanding the nature of my own mind and the nature of life, really. So from that point on, I came across some mindfulness research and a couple guided meditations, and sort of hit the ground running ever since. Now it's been such an integral part of my life, and the people I coach with, as well as do leadership trainings with, and anyone I really interact with, seems to sort of bleed through at the seams. So yeah, super excited to share, be on this journey, and to get into it.
Great. So let's get started then. So why don't you start with this first slide, Kyle?
Yeah. So if we look at what mindfulness is, right, it's kind of a buzzword, and there's so much hype around it. Sometimes hard to notice the difference of distinguish what from what. But the simplest idea, I think, is to pay attention on purpose to the present moment, or from moment to moment, without judgment. So I'll unpack that again. You're just paying attention to the present moment on purpose. So you're not daydreaming, it's intentional, and without judgment. And the biggest thing for me is that it is a practice, it is a skill. So this everything we're talking about today isn't just something you're either born with or not born with. We don't really look at it the same way we look at IQ, where we tend to see it as fixed. It's something we can grow, which I think is why there's so much hype around it. There's so much excitement and belief in it. And in theory, it really is that straightforward. It's just practicing being fully present, fully aware, and fully able to engage in your situation or environment, right? So especially now when you think of all the distractions and the war for your attention, whether it's walking on the street or at the store or advertising online now, and there's a lot of distraction out there. There's a lot of sort of hustle and bustle, and mindfulness is a way of regrounding, bringing the attention back to within your control and actually noticing what goes on in your life. And a way to, I know I've said present a lot, and what does that kind of mean, right? And I think if we're looking at the next slide here, it's all about, you can think of a timeline. So past, present, and future, right? Well, if you want to be present, that literally means not being stuck in the past and not being stuck or worried about the future, right? So, and this might be a little philosophical, but any point of your life only exists right now. And what I kind of mean by that is, as you're going through your day, or as long as you're alive, you're only alive in the present moment. Everything else is illusory or is made up. It's not to say that the past isn't important or the future isn't important, and to say that there's no value in learning from the past or preparing for the future wouldn't be true. And I think both Brenda and I agree. There's definitely value in planning and learning, but we do it way more than we think. If you think about anxiety, it's worrying about the future, right? Or even sadness, despair, and depression. They're all about what went on in the past and worrying about things we can't actually change. If we come back to the present and keep that sort of groundedness, really keep the attention down to what is happening right now in my environment, where I am. This is where a lot of the power unfolds. This is where a lot of the effects of mindfulness, where you see increased productivity, you see increased focus, a lot more gratitude to be able to enjoy that time spent with your kid right now, or whatever the case is, that fun project at work, or even just a simple commute, a simple train ride or car ride to and from work, which can have a lot of fulfillment in it if you're there in the moment. So Eckhart Tolle also stresses this a lot, who talks about the power of now, right? And in his teaching, there's a very important skill that mindfulness really expresses, which is being able to let go of the past and the future. And I think Brenda will take into letting go on that note.
Thanks, Kyle. I agree totally. It really is powerful to be in the present moment. The past has happened. We can't deny it. The future is going to happen. It's coming, but being in that present moment. And I remember when I first started learning about and practicing mindfulness, that I honestly thought, well, I am mindful. I am, present in my daily activities. But once I really started to dive into it, there were a lot of times where I was holding on to past emotions or past events that were preventing me from being really present in and mindful of my here and now experience. There's a great quote by Sonia Ricotti. It's surrender to what is, let go of what was, and have faith in what will be. So it's all about letting go of previous experiences and feelings so that you can truly live in the now and glean maximum potential from our current situation. It's such an important step, or such an important piece of being mindful. Is you can often, without even really consciously being aware of it, get yourself into these thoughts of something that happened in the past, or worries about something that might be happening in the future. But it takes, it's a muscle. It's training your brain to come back to the present, to be grounded, to be mindful, and experience what's happening here and now. And for those of you who are listening at the replay, how many, just give some thought to how many have wrongfully ever believed that something you were told was factual, without really exploring it and allowing that to become your reality. I remember some of the things that I grew up with when I was a child, that as I became an adult, started to explore them and understand from an adult perspective that maybe that was my parents' or my teacher's lens, or whatever it was, that I could have continued to believe that. I could have allowed that to continually distract my thoughts from the present and the here and now. So without testing that, without pushing the boundaries of that, and really understanding whether that belief was a fact, or whether something was just something that I had been taught to believe. And when you're holding on to those things that aren't necessarily serving you anymore, you become this ball of anxiety, or you become this person with a whole bunch of needless worry. And so letting go is a difficult skill to master, because we've been conditioned from when we were kids to sort of look at things a certain way. And by being mindful and training our brains to really calm down and be present and just recognize what's happening here and now, we start to become more self-aware, and start to look more critically at some of the things that we've grown up with, or we believe that may not necessarily be serving us to be in the here and now. So I'll hand it off back to you again, Kyle. Let's talk about mindfulness, anxiety, and depression.
Yeah, well, and I love what you shared too, right? The idea that a thought is not necessarily a fact, right? But we tend to treat it that way. Right? And if you look at the most prevalent mental health concerns in North America, and typically globally as well, anxiety and depression are right up there, if not at the top, right? And anxiety and depression both live in what we were talking about earlier, in the past and in the future, but not in the now. So take anxiety and preoccupation about a presentation coming up, or a social gathering coming up, or what am I going to do in my job for the next 5 years? Whatever, any worry that can enter in your mind and can kind of insidiously slip in and grow. It's all about dealing with the future. It's all about either planning or obsessing. And again, it's not in its own right a bad thing. It's useful to plan and to prepare for your career, or to prepare for a family, and to think about what could go wrong sometimes. I think the question here is how is it serving me? So if I'm obsessing about the future to the point where I'm so worried about an interview that I have coming up that I end up not sleeping for a week, I end up not eating, is that worry really serving me, right? And a way to address that is to come back to right now. am I having the interview right now? No, it's a week before, and I'm thinking about it. It's just a thought. Is that thought serving me? Well, you know what? I would like to sleep tonight, and maybe for the next few days before this interview. So why don't I do that? Mindfulness is a way of it's really simple. You know, it's not a pressure. It's not some sort of squeezing. It's just letting go, as you were saying before, Brenda, and returning to the now. The same is true with depression. If obsessing over something that went wrong, or despair, and rumination about the past, again, it's not living in right now. Even while you're thinking about the past, in that moment, you're not actually in that memory. You're existing in the now. You know. So again, mindfulness is just a gentle way of being able to recognize where my thoughts are. Am I living behind me, ahead of me, or right now? Drawing awareness to that, and then refamiliarizing yourself with, oh, okay, I don't actually have to think about this car accident that slipped into my mind, or this failed interview. You can even look at it both ways. It really is not contingent. This whole practice we're addressing here is not contingent on your feeling or on your state. So a lot of words there, and I think I'll keep it simple. Where even with something as strong as anxiety, something as pressing as worry and depression, mindfulness has become so popular because it still works. It's just a gentle shifting back to the present moment, and we'll of course explain how exactly to do that later. But this is again why it leads to such height. Incredibly so. And it's not only in a clinical context, right? You also see being able to return to the present and enjoy the moment you have right now also helps with cognitive flexibility, right? And I'll let Brenda sort of elaborate on that. But there's not just sort of one use to mindfulness, right? It helps this whole realm. So Brenda, I'll pass it off to you to elaborate on not just the clinical benefits, but the everyday benefits you can see in your mind.
Yeah, and I mentioned before, and Kyle's right. This ability to be mindful, to stop your thoughts from getting stuck in the past or worry about the future, it takes effort, and it takes retraining our brains. Most people have been sort of conditioned to, from years, of either spending a lot of time in worry about the past or worry about the future, anxiety, as Kyle had mentioned. But cognitive flexibility, if you think about it, it's really retraining your brain to become less reactive and more mindful. And it's about switching from, it's about awareness. So am I in that state of the past or that state of the present? First of all, is it helpful that I'm there? If it isn't, how do I bring myself back to the present? And mindfulness and some of the techniques we're going to share with you a little bit later are actually really good ways to retrain your brain. And I've been, and Kyle, you can probably share as well too, but we've practiced it enough that for us now, it's almost like a switch. It's a quick change for us compared to when I remember when I first started doing this. I would, even in a meditation, my mind would be wandering all over the place. And did I return that phone call? And what about that email? And did I close the door when I left the house? And then I'd go, oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be being mindful here. And so it would take conscious effort to bring myself back to what it was that I was supposed to be doing. And that's about cognitive flexibility, really conditioning your brain, teaching it that there are moments when it's okay to be in reflecting on the past. It's adding some insight, some awareness into whatever you're working on right now. There's moments when it's okay to think about the future, like you talked about planning for events with family, and you might want to, think about, well, what would be a really nice surprise for my family if I showed up a day early or whatever. So there are moments where it's perfectly normal to be in those places, but when when you've set up camp and you're staying in the present and really not in the present, when you've set up camp and you're stuck in the past and not really in the present, this ability to teach our brains to stretch that muscle of ours and to bring us back to the present. And some of the mindfulness techniques that we're going to talk about are things that you can start practicing right now that will actually help you to get there.
Yeah, and I'm going to touch into some of the techniques. And just before we get into that, a thought just came up about sort of an example of this, to put this into context. So when you think about, I think about being able to respond instead of just reacting. Mm-hmm. And you talked about, kind of, Brenda, that switch that kind of goes off, right? And we have been doing it long enough where it is kind of that quick now. We can spot an emotional reaction pretty much right in the moment and be able to tend to it and respond accordingly. And it does feel like there's a more almost like working memory available, like RAM space. I have more cognitive freedom to respond. And the example I'll give is about a year ago, I was coming back from Mexico, and because of it's a long story. The Cliff Notes is I was bit by a dog on the finger, and I had just before I was leaving, so I had to tend to that, go to emergency, and figure all this out. And as a result of that, I was late getting to the airport, later than I intended. And then once I got to the airport, I discovered they actually close their gates half an hour earlier than basically any airline in the world. And this was a red-eye flight. So it was about midnight, and I had to be back the next day at a specific time for work and to get on with my day. So my whole schedule was disrupted. I tried to speak with someone, and my Spanish is, enough that I could let them know what was going on, but not fluent enough to actually be able to persuade them to let me on. But I just remember in the moment finding out, hey, there's no way you're going to get on this flight. And you can't get a refund, and you're going to have to figure out something on your own. And really in that moment, I was kind of furious and questioning, like, how can this be? I was sort of denying that this was the reality too. Like, no, you're going to let me on. That can't be it. And then in a moment, as you described that switch, I realized, what's going to serve me here? Like, the quicker I can come to this reality, to right now, there's no way I'm getting on this flight, and I need to be home so I can get to work. The quicker I can accept this, the quicker I can actually do something about it. So I remember the switch just kind of went off, and it was like, wow, now that I'm not obsessing over having missed this flight, why do they have their policies like this? These are not useful thoughts for me right now. What's useful is, okay, I'm going to hop on Google Flights or Skyscanner, find a flight that works, and let's find a way to get me home on time. I ended up finding a flight. I got a discounted price for it within like 30 minutes. I had to sleep in the airport for about 5 hours, which, not ideal, but also if that's what I had to do, that's what I had to do. And I got back home in time to make it for work, and even time to shower and have a little, actually I did a meditation. So there's real application here, right? And we could probably both go on for the rest of this webinar with examples like that. But it's not just about reducing suffering; it's also improving problem solving, right? Like in the moment.
Great example.
Yeah, and the way that kind of works is, it might seem sort of counterintuitive, but you get to the problem solving, especially in a tight situation like the one I just described, by actually slowing down. It seems like you want to speed up and take 100 things at a time and think about every possibility, but the opposite, and this is where mindfulness comes in, is actually the most productive thing to do. So by slowing down, you can actually absorb, okay, what is actually going on right now? in my environment, and what is actually just thoughts racing around. What is actually me obsessing over complaints I have about this airline policy, and what is actually me thinking about a different flight I could take right now, right? So a really easy way to incorporate mindfulness into your life is, as I said, to just slow things down. So you can slow down your walks to work. You can slow down your meals by actually chewing even more, or just noticing the taste of the food that you actually eat. You'd be surprised how good a carrot actually tastes, just by and how sweet it actually tastes. And I've done this just by taking about 5 minutes just to eat it and nothing else. Sounds a little maybe extreme for some people, maybe not, but by slowing down, and I can actually notice the chewing. I can notice the sugars as they release as I bite into the carrot, for example. It sounds insane, but it works, and you'll notice it if you try it. The same is true with how you respond, right? When someone is having a conversation with you, if I can slow down, I can actually hear what they're saying, not what I interpret them saying, not the way I want to finish their sentence, or I'm just waiting for them to shut up so I can, add my 2 cents. I can slow down. I don't have to give in to every thought running through my head, and just be present, right? And when we do slow down, you automatically become more mindful, right? Your attention automatically gets more focused on the task at hand. And it doesn't only optimize the productivity, but also the enjoyment of what you're actually doing, because you're actually there for it. Whether it's reading that book, or whether it's going through that email you want to deliver, it really doesn't matter the object of what you're doing. You can do this everywhere, right? And some of the more common ways of slowing down is through breath control, is through getting sufficient sleep, so you're not feeling like an engine that's firing 100% all the time, or overfiring, and also minimizing distractions, right? Even watching a movie and just putting the phone away, or a lot of people like to eat or drink while they watch film, and you can even really, like a half-hour show can feel like you're getting a 2-hour reset just by watching the show and not having either having the food before or after, not having the phone, just being there for it. So you can think about other ways you can slow down and be present to where you're at. And we're gonna do actually try out slowing down here in a second. And Brenda, the floor is yours to introduce us to a little bit of breath control.
Yeah, I'll do that in a second. As you were talking about mindfulness and eating, I remember one of the exercises that we did when we were in that training, and it was about being very mindful. And I remember I'm quite literally someone who would drive 100 miles to get a chocolate bar. And
Nice.
so they brought chocolate chip cookies in one day, and I am someone who honestly would drive that far to get a chocolate bar. And so these chocolate chip cookies show up, and I had to be very intentional and just be mindful of the cookie. And I noticed all the chocolate chips, and I thought about all the times I made chocolate chip cookies with my mom and my grandmother. And as I was very intentional with that cookie sitting in front of me, that super temptation that I've always had, what I found over time, instead of wanting to devour the cookie, was that I really just appreciated the cookie. I didn't touch it for the rest of the day because it wasn't that I was hungry for a cookie. It wasn't that I was even hungry. It was a habit that I had created about devouring anything that had chocolate in it. And by actually practicing mindfulness and being very aware of all of the things that came up associated to that chocolate cookie, I just became really grateful about my mom and my grandmother and all of those wonderful experiences that I would have missed had I just devoured the cookie.
I love that example, right? Because you can think about it's not even just about a cookie, right? And I'm the same. I'm not for a chocolate bar, but for chocolate brownies. I'll run 100 miles to get those brownies. And I love. I'm always actually blown away when I go to like a bakery or even a cafe, and I see people get a cookie or a brownie, and they take bites out of it. Like, to me, every brownie is a 2-bite brownie, no matter how big it is.
That's right.
I'm always confused when they have the labeling, right? Because I don't know any other way. And then we did this exercise, right? And even like a half a bite, it was painful to go through this at first, to take, like, first of all, to look at the chocolate chip cookie we had, and to hold it and not even put it directly in your mouth. Like, if there's food in my hand, why is it taking any time there's no delay getting to my mouth, right? But this time we tried that, and I just had so much more appreciation, even to get halfway through the cookie, realize, like, oh, there's a dough here. That's kind of cool, and I'm a big foodie, so I could get into everything about the cookie. But replace cookie with anything in your life.
Yeah.
Replace it with time spent with your son or daughter, right? The time spent in that moment is the only time that exists, right? Now I can think about, I have a whole bag of brownies, so I can bite this one and that's okay, and I'm going to get to 20 more brownies in a second. Or I can think, oh, I have 5 children, so right now I'm at Derek's soccer practice, but I can still be on my phone, or I don't really have to focus too much because Linda's got ballet tomorrow, so I still have time, quote unquote, with my kids. And that's exactly how time slips away,
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the example, and I don't want to belabor the point, but it's really the beauty of mindfulness here, right? It can encompass any part of your experience, whether it's enjoying that one bite of a cookie, or at 10 seconds you're actually focused on the ballet recital for your daughter, right? So yeah, great point.
Great. Okay, let's move on to some techniques that we want to share with you that will actually give you the opportunity to sort of begin to explore mindfulness and to flex that cognitive muscle of yours. And one of the techniques that I want to share is, and I have sort of 3 breathing techniques, but breath work is really a vital tool that helps slow down and become more mindful. So when we focus on the inhale and exhale, our mind, we become very present. And so I'm going to walk you through 3 techniques. The first one is equal breathing, and it's really about, like I said, focusing on the inhale and exhale, and focusing on balance in terms of the length of time that you inhale at equal to the length of time that you exhale. And what you can do is inhale to the count of 4, and then exhale to the count of 4. And you're counting in your mind. So also focus on doing it through your nose. So I'm going to breathe through my mouth because I can't breathe through my nose and not talk. But so you would breathe in, and you'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, all while you're breathing in, counting in your mind. And then you would exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, and just get into that rhythm so that it's to a 4 beat, and you're breathing in through your nose and exhaling through your nose. And it's fascinating to see how quickly that will sort of calm things down and bring you back to the present moment. The really experienced meditation practitioners and yogis can actually do a breath count of 6 or even 8. I'm not there yet. I'm not that skilled. I stick with the 4, but find a natural, balanced breathing in and breathing out that feels comfortable for you, and just practice that anywhere, anytime. The best place to actually practice this is right before you go to bed. So you're already trying to get into a very relaxed state, and as you're lying there, just focus on your breath. Even go so far as to notice your chest rising and falling, and notice it as it is in harmony with that 4 count. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and just become very aware of that. And that's what mindfulness is, being present to what's happening.
I like this too, this one in particular, because I think most people think about breath when they think about mindfulness or meditation. It's such a common anchor, and it doesn't have to be. Again, mindfulness can apply to everything, but breath is such a simple, everyone breathes, right? And it's such a simple thing to focus. And it doesn't take, you don't need to buy something to try this out, right? But this exact exercise, I actually tried at the dentist this morning. And sometimes, I mean, I think people can get even up to like a minute on an inhale and a minute on an exhale. I've heard some crazy numbers, but I got up to about 10 breaths on the inhale, 10 on the exhale. And I had like a cleaning, and a pretty invasive cleaning. And, it's sharp, and I have sensitive teeth, my gums bleed. So I was doing this, and I was almost laughing at how calm I was, because it hurt for sure. There was pain. And I could see, as they had the suction thing, I could see, blood every now and then going in that thing. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. But I was doing this exact exercise to the point where the hygienist had to like shove my shoulder a little, because I fell asleep. I fell asleep with my mouth open, and needles in my gums. But I'm not saying this is gonna put you to sleep no matter what. But it does work, and it's simple, and it's something that you can practice really anytime, whether you're right before bed or you're walking to work. But it is a really cool calming exercise as well. So
yeah, and I did this because I really struggled with getting used to meditation when I first started doing it. And this is the thing that I could stop my busy mind and get me back into the meditation. And so it's been so powerful just in that useful technique to be able to get myself back into what it is that I'm focusing on. So, so the next breathing technique that I want to talk about is, it's called abdominal breathing. And it's great for opening your airways, expanding your lungs, increasing oxygen flow to the brain. And it's actually been proven to affect alertness. So how it's done is you put, I just need to switch my camera because I want to make sure that you can see what I'm doing here. But you basically put one hand on your chest and one hand on your diaphragm. And the goal is to do 6 to 10 really deep, slow breaths per minute for about 10 minutes. So again, like before, like the other example, just paying attention to the deep breath in through your nose and following it through as it goes back out, and just paying attention to your chest and your diaphragm and what's happening there. It has some really positive effects for reducing heart rate and blood pressure. And it's something that you could practice intentionally. Just find a moment or two, 10 minutes every day to just sort of sit with that and practice that. And Kyle, you talked about, I think, interviews and things like that. Getting yourself worried or stressed out before something like that. This is a really cool technique to use to really get you calmed down before an interview or an exam that you might have to take, something that you're worried that might be stressful for you, to just pay attention to this breathing technique. Any thoughts that you want to add there?
Well, I think, again, like breathing is so simple that sometimes I know when I first came across this whole concept of being present, being in the now, mindfulness, all these things. Okay, it's so amazing. What do I do? And then, the big secret, here it is. And it's like, just breathe.
And it's so simple, and yet it's so powerful.
Well, it's almost painfully simple or deceivingly simple that you think, what do you mean just breathe? Like, I've been breathing my whole life and I still have anxiety. So what are you saying? But it really is you can't breathe in the past and you can't breathe in the future. So as long as you're breathing, and more importantly, as long as you're aware that you're breathing, you're in right now.
Yeah.
Ta-da! That's the secret. And yes, we have the monkey brain, and our brains are designed and wired to not just track even something as simple as breath. You might focus on it for the inhale, and by the time you even get to the exhale, in that little pause after the inhale, you might already have wandered. Your brain might already be thinking, as you said, if you're right before an interview, okay, what are my strengths? What are my qualities? You're right back into thought. But breath is such a basic anchor that it still works, And the nice part about these techniques, as you said, Brenda, is that they actually also calm as well. They have a positive effect, as well as bringing back to the present moment. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving on, the third technique that I want to share with you is called alternate nostril breathing. And it really is about, again, still equalizing the amount of oxygen on both sides of your brain. And so we have a thinking side of our brain and a creative side of our brain. And when we do this alternate nostril breathing technique, it enhances the strength of both sides of our brain. So this one is, again, I want to pop my image back up on my screen so I can see. But it really is about breathing through different sides of your nostril. So what you do is you start with your thumb over your right nostril, and it forces you then to breathe in through your left nostril. So you breathe in, and as soon as you get your air in, then you switch, and with your pointer finger, close off your left nostril and breathe out through your right nostril. And just continue that breathing process. It might feel a little silly at first, and as I'm watching myself on the screen, it does look a little silly. But the truth is, it is so powerful in balancing the oxygen that's going to the different sides of your brain. And if you're giving equal amounts of oxygen, how powerful it enhances the energy that's going to both your left and your right side of the brains, to your thinker brain and to your creative brain, and really enhancing the experience for your overall peak brain power. So this is something that is good. It can be good for focus and energy. So if you've got a deadline that you have to meet at work or whatever, and you just need to really get yourself in a place of focus and energy, this closing off the different sides of your nostril and breathing in through one and out through the other is such a really creative way to really bring balance to that. So anything you want to add there, Kyle?
Well, again, I don't want to belabor the point, but there is something about the simplicity here, and really anyone can do this, and I do this sometimes when I'm walking, and when I started out, it felt ridiculous, and I would just like laugh, like on the bus, just breathing in one nose and then closing and breathing out in the other, and had a lot of empty seats around me. People would choose to sit at the back of the bus for sure when I started out. But all jokes aside, the simplicity really can't be understated here. But as much as we're talking about it, everything kind of makes sense. The effects that we're talking about, and increased focus, concentration, everything that people rave about with this practice really is understood by the doing. So it's great that we can share this information and explain it, and it'll really solidify by just trying it. So grab a quiet spot or somewhere where you can actually try these. Also, if you don't like the breath, I know when I first started, even sometimes still now, focusing on the breath makes me think more about my breath, and then I get short of breath, and it kind of cycles in. And I'm at the point now where I realize even that shortness of breath is another thought cycle that I can let go of, and I'm experienced enough now to to be able to do that. And I built that skill by focusing on the breath. But look, if you don't want to start out with breath, you can start out with sounds. You can start out with a sensation in your hand or the foot. It really it's not contingent, again, on any one particular thing. But breath is usually the simplest entryway for most people. And also, I want to note again, like the nostril breathing or the abdominal breathing, even the equal time inhaling and exhaling, this is still what meditators of 50, 60, 70 years, that's still what they do. I mean, it's not like these are introductory techniques and this is just a beginner level. Like, this is an introduction, and also this is an anchor for mindfulness, whether you're a highly experienced lifelong meditator or you've never even heard the word mindfulness. So again, and I think that introduces well into meditation, right? And mindfulness and meditation kind of go hand in hand. They're often used synonymously. A bit of a distinction. The biggest distinction with mindfulness is kind of like the concept, the idea of being present, and everything that comes with that, being actually noticing, having awareness of your moment to moment on purpose without judgment, as I was saying earlier. Meditation is the simple practice of that. Meditation is the doing of that. And you think about the analogy I kind of use is the difference between nutrition and cooking, where nutrition is the concept and the idea of eating healthy and doing something that is healthy for your body and your mind. And cooking is the actual doing of it. Cooking is how you get those nutrients, how you prepare them, right? And cooking usually is a skill too. It's something you can practice, and typically you do every day. So that, hopefully that analogy kind of helps, right? And meditation, again, a lot of buzzwords around it, maybe a lot of different connotations. It doesn't have to be, it can be secular, and it still applies all the same. All the meditation is simply actually applying mindfulness. So doing a breathing technique, or sitting down and just noticing the sounds that are within your earshot. And that's all meditation is. You can do it while you take time, set time aside to sit down, close your eyes, and just notice, allow thoughts, allow everything to just surface without identifying with it. Or you can technically meditate while you're walking, as I said, while you're on the street and noticing strangers go by, and just looking at a stranger, noticing the first thought that comes to mind, and then letting go, and then doing that with the next person. So I want to do a quick little example of a meditation. This will just be 1 minute. Again, it's going to be simple. Just follow. I'll guide it so you can follow my voice, and just notice what you notice. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Simple, as I said. So all you're going to do is find a comfortable position. You can uncross your legs and hands. You can close your eyes if you like. If you want to keep them open, perfectly fine. All you're going to do is get that position and just kind of sink into your body. Just let the weight of your body press against the chair or the floor, wherever you happen to be sitting on. Just going to take a breath in and exhale. I'm just going to follow the breath here. So inhale again. And as you reach the top of the inhale, just exhale. So notice the next 4 breaths. As you notice the next 3 breaths or so, your mind might wander. Maybe you've caught yourself hearing clicking or other sounds, or thinking about someone. That's okay. Just simply begin again. Come back to the breath. And one more exhale. Okay. Congratulations. If you've never meditated before, you've now just meditated. Notice how that might have been for you, right? Maybe it was really easy. Maybe it was boring. Maybe you had thoughts like, is this meditate? Like, am I doing this right? All those are more thoughts for the meditation. It's just more of the consciousness, more of the thought stream that feeds into itself. And that's exactly what you take note of in meditation. Maybe you found it very easy to track the breath, very calming. Maybe there were judgments like, oh, I'm no good at this. I know that was the case for me when I started. There's no way this could possibly be this easy. And as I'm thinking these things, I'm not thinking about the breath. So even something as simple as watching the breath can be incredibly challenging. So again, congratulations. That was about a minute there. And that's essentially part of the practice that we're going to help build. And before we do, I just want to give a little more context, and we'll show a few more applications, and then we'll get into it, right? So even something like meditation, having a mindfulness practice, there are proven results, proven benefits at a neurophysiological level, at the level of the brain, that we can actually see and that have been shown, right? And there's a little bit of neuroscience to this, right? And one of my favorite pieces of research is it's neuroscience around meditators and people who were new to meditation, people who were have been experienced in it for quite a while. And Brenda, do you mind just pop into oh, perfect. So the idea here is the brain is wired in two ways. One is called the default mode network. I'll use a little bit of jargon here, but it's okay if you don't remember. Default mode network, though, is essentially getting caught up in thought, getting in either a daydream or identifying as a thought, and kind of having that monkey mind, that racing mind. Typically, you can use it in planning and rumination. Again, it's not a good or bad thing. This is just one frame of mind in the brain. And then there's also the task positive network. Task positive network is being able to focus sharply on one specific thing, typically, with kind of all your attention and all the awareness. You can guess which network mindfulness resides in. It's the task positive network, right? Here's the thing: we're wired to live in, and our brains are wired to mostly activate in the default mode network, which is racing the mind, a lot of thoughts coming in. Not necessarily, it's more like scattered awareness. And when they hook people up to functional MRIs, so you can see brain activation across time, when people start meditating, you see the task positive network light up on these fMRIs, and the default mode network sort of deactivate. There's no activity. And then the same way, while they're doing a meditation, thinking about the breath, and now a thought comes into my mind about, what am I going to make for dinner? I'm not sure if I bought enough squash. Whatever the thought comes into mind, you're now ruminating, caught in thought, and you actually, these fMRIs show activation in the default mode network, the other part of the brain associated with distraction or a lot of thoughts. So the default mode network and the task positive network are actually anti-correlated, they call it. So when one is activated, the other shut off. When the other is activated, the other shut off correspondingly. So the reason this is part of my favorite research is because it's been shown that with a mindfulness practice and with practiced meditation, as people do it more and more, and participants in these studies continue to meditate more and more, even 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day, the activity that they experience, even as a default in their default mode network, again, this racing mind, actually decreases. Part of the brains associated, the brain parts associated with that network shrink in size because they don't have to be so hyperactive. And the task positive network actually grows. So you see more activation and an increase in size. So, there's a real physical proof to this. Having a practice of just following the breath or meditation, just like the 1 minute one we just did, you activated, even if it's for half a second, you activated and strengthened that task positive network, that ability to sharpen focus, to stay in the present. So this excites me, and I could go on with, and I'll list some of these studies. at the end when we list the resources, and happy to field any questions if you want to reach out more. But I'll cap it there because I get too excited and I can label on. But it's really cool to see that there's actually something tangible here, and something exciting therein.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember when I first, that course that we were in, and I started to really understand sort of the powerful impacts from a neurological perspective. It's fascinating. And you're right, the research, you could go on forever talking about it. So mindfulness and yoga. Mindfulness and yoga and meditation, they're all often associated with one another, and they all deal with bringing the mind, body back into a state of balance. And so there are elements of both meditation and mindfulness in yoga. However, mindfulness and meditation can be taught independent from yoga. So you don't need to be doing yoga to practice mindfulness or meditation. And if you think about it, they all practice on cultivating awareness. So when you're doing yoga, you're very aware of your whole body and all of the elements of from head to toe of your body. And the same applies when you're in meditation. So you're very aware of what's happening in your mind. I know when I was, I've mentioned this before, but when I was first learning about meditation, and people are all around me were having these powerful transcendental experiences, and I just saw a black screen in front of me, and I wasn't getting any messages from the higher, the universe or anything like that. And I felt quite disappointed that I wasn't, and judging myself that I wasn't experiencing this the way everybody else around me was. And I had to be very intentional with myself in that I was just in a different place in my meditation journey than some of the people who were around me. And it eventually came, and I eventually got it. Actually, through a meditation is how I got my Worthy program. And so I was in a meditation, and a very ornate wooden box was placed in my hand, and as I opened it, there was a book inside of it, and it actually had written on it the words, "I'm not worthy," and then someone had taken the words, I'm not, and crossed it out with red lipstick and wrote above it, "I'm totally worthy." So it switched it from, and that all came to me through a meditation. And so I guess what I'm saying here now is just be patient with yourself and play with it and have some fun with it. I know that one woman I know who really struggled with carving out time in her day to really do a yoga practice or a mindfulness practice or a meditation practice, she now does what she calls 3 for 3. So she'll do 3 minutes of meditation 3 times a day. And so she finds that easier to practice than carving out 20 minutes a day to do yoga or 20 minutes a day to do a meditation. And really it's about intention. So what I'm wanting to do is condition my brain, flex that muscle, and teach it that there are other ways of bringing mindfulness and awareness into my day. And if that happens in 3 minutes or the 1 minute that Kyle just did with it, whatever, find the thing that resonates with you and works for you, and just really begin to cultivate that as best as you can.
Yeah. Well, and some people really love yoga. You know, it's a really therapeutic and enjoyable exercise. I wouldn't qualify myself as falling into that category. I do it, and I enjoy it in a different way because of the challenge for me. But regardless, whether you enjoy it or whether you love it, yoga is an amazing way to really connect with what the body's feeling, right? And to really connect with, this is a bit of a stretch, literally a bit of a stretch for me. I'm gonna get curious here. What is that? What does really a stretch feel like?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a grouping of sensations in my hamstring. What is the hamstring? You can get really curious here, and the reason yoga and mindfulness are so intertwined is, as you said, I mean, they're kind of one and the same. Yoga is a beautiful expression and an easy gateway expression into awareness. Following the breath often. Noticing a stretch in your back or whatever muscle you happen to be stretching.
Yeah.
So they really fit hand in hand. And I love what you said. I mean, even like yoga can be, sometimes I wake up in the morning, I stand up and just take a few breaths and just bend over, touch my toes, hold that, and then 10 seconds, and that's my yoga for the day.
Yeah.
And it's just finding whatever works for you. Same with a meditation. If I love that 3 for 3, I hadn't heard that before. But those 3 minutes, 3 times a day is better than 20 minutes once a week,
Yeah.
right? It's forming the consistent habit.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about mindfulness with kids. And I love some of the things that I've been seeing on social media about mindfulness or meditation practices that are happening in schools, and some of the benefits that happen when kids what's coming to me right now is that children are more adaptable to change, and integrating this as a practice in their life. It's a bit more challenging, especially as you become an adult. Your mind is everywhere, and it's more more distracted on let's get the bills paid and let's whatever. But kids are just in this state of curiosity and let's try it. It looks interesting. And so when I see the posts on social media about practices in different schools where they're incorporating mindfulness and meditation and even yoga for kids and teenagers, I love seeing that. I think I even saw one recently in Canada where RCMP officers were incorporating it into their daily practice. And so when you think about it for kids and teenagers, using some of these techniques, it's actually been proven that it decreases symptoms of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and it even can have a significant effect on behavior issues. So if you have young people in your life, and even if they're not practicing it at their school, it's actually a really interesting, positive opportunity to even have a little bit of that practice and incorporating it in your family life as well too. So huge benefits for kids as well too. What about workplace? Kyle, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, huge benefits for kids. Mindfulness is a huge benefit for the parents too. And especially when you think about what is the source of most people's, or the greatest source of stress in most people's lives, typically is the workplace. Right? It's at work, which again, is not necessarily good or bad things. Stress is useful for some people and harmful for some. It just depends on how it's used and how it's managed, right? So if you think about children having more concentration in school, being able to focus on the task at hand, not being distracted by crumpling of paper behind them and their classmates. Well, most people work in a group setting as well. There's crumpling of paper. There's people on calls around. There's either other cubicles and people at the water cooler, or people on a construction site and a lot of sounds going on, and you have one job to do. It doesn't matter where you're working. Having increased concentration and an increased focus is going to be useful, right? And the ability to sort of tune out anything not serving you and being able to focus on the task at hand, whether it's writing that email or working on that deck slide or pouring the concrete in the driveway, whatever it is. Being able to not only focus on your job more with more ease, but also being able to leave it, not take it home with you, So stress is also just another thought. And I'm not going to downplay the intensity of stress or that it's not real. Of course it's real. And it's also equally as manageable as breath. That might sound like a stretch or a far claim, but it's really no different. Being able to track an inhale with increased focus, the same way you're able to track a stressful worry or, oh, I have that deadline next week. How do I want to respond to it, right? Most people have lunchtime, right? Even a half-hour meditation or yoga is more and more common now in office culture. But even getting a 10-minute or a 5-minute, something where you can sit down and just allow your thoughts to be and just focus on right now during a lunch break is such an easy way to sort of have that nice reset and go about your day.
Perfect. Yeah, I noticed that I'm working on a project right now in a corporate setting again, and I'm finding that if I'm not very intentional in protecting my energy and my space and my experience, that even the experience of people around me and some of the stress that they're having can come and permeate in me. And so I use mindfulness and just breath work to kind of keep me balanced, because I'm way more productive, I find, when I have that sort of focus. So mindfulness and confidence, becoming more aware of ourselves. So through mindfulness, it actually sometimes can have one of the challenges that it can create for us is that it can raise our awareness of some of our weaknesses or difficulties that we're experiencing. And it's easy, I think, to go back to our comfort zone, the things that we're that's predictable for us, that we've been doing for years and years, and go back to this lack of self-confidence state of mind, because mindfulness can bring out, well, maybe I should have done this differently, or maybe I should have done that differently. And the other choice that you might have, so it might be easy to go back to, well, I really screwed up, or I shouldn't have done that. The other choice might be to actually embrace it as this new awareness of this thing that you could actually address and become even more confident in embracing yourselves. So I love this. It's one of the key elements that I talk about in my Worthy program. It's about manifesting through mindfulness a greater enhanced level of self-confidence. And again, habits might want to defer you back to your comfort zone, and I'm not good enough at this, and look at all these things that are coming into my awareness that I now have to deal with. Or as I like to look at it is, yay, this is another opportunity for me to uncover one of the things that is impeding my ability to be really standing in my strength and my greatness. And so I actually embrace those things when they come up in my mindfulness experience. I used to joke and say, oh great, another thing for me to resolve. But now I'm truly at the place of, oh, this is good, because every time I uncover something that's affecting my ability to stand in my own confidence, in my own worth, every time I uncover something like that, it is for me now an opportunity to actually enhance my confidence. And I used to be very afraid of it and used to almost run from it, because it felt like I was just constantly unpackaging these things that made me feel not worthy. But it's just reframing that. So one of the things that I actually like to do with my clients is a guided meditation, and you kind of did a brief one for about a minute there, Kyle, but I actually have some guided meditations that I take my clients through that really help them, especially with that self-confidence piece. There are a ton of resources online that you can, if there's a particular thing in your life that you're really wanting to focus on, that you can find these guided meditations. If you're not sure how to get started or how to really start to retrain your brain, start with some guided meditations. They can be incredibly useful because then you don't actually have to you can just follow that journey, that guided meditation. One of my favorite ones that I used when I first started doing this was a one from Louise Hay, and it was just repetitive positive affirmations in my ear while I was falling asleep. And so I listened to those to sort of train my brain to get a little bit more used to actually going into this mindfulness or meditative state. And like I said, find if there's something specific that you want to work on, find some of those resources online. I currently use one that's called, I'm drawing a blank. I have to look at my phone. I think it's Insight Timer. It's an app that you can download on your phone. And so if I'm not sleeping well, I'll listen to one that is focused on deep sleep and breathing. If I'm worried about, say, finances, I will listen to one that's focused on abundance and get me focused on those positive thoughts and feelings, as opposed to in those anxious and worry states that we talked about previously. I like to listen to these things at the end of the day. I like giving my mind, my brain, those positive, empowering messages as I'm going to sleep, because I like them to continue to wander around in my brain while I'm sleeping at night. So that's when I find it most effective, is to do it just as I'm drifting off to sleep. I know you do that as well too, Kyle.
I do, yeah. And I love, I'm a big proponent of the guided meditations because it is a nice way to, why we're here, right? How do you build the practice? So, we've spent over an hour talking about the why and the what of meditation and mindfulness, and to really give it context. And I think it's important, right? Because when you're clear on the why and clear on, pick something that something would have stood out to you more than something else been so far in the presentation. Maybe it was the breathing, or maybe it was increased patience with loved ones, or maybe it was mindfulness for your kids, or in the workplace. There's something that will resonate with you, and it's this is one of the most important things, I should say, to really even understand why build a mindfulness practice here. Whatever that thing is that is important. So for me, when I started, it was really being able to enjoy my life, and not being able to have all the hustle, not lose any of my edge, being able to be, a high achiever and take on a lot of things at once, and never for a moment forgetting I can enjoy it, and I can enjoy every second of that. That really stuck for me. See, at this point, what stands out for you? Yeah. And the guided meditation is a nice way to, okay, now that I know why, maybe it's having, as I said, more patience, or not being so reactive with anger, and not being tied up by anxiety, or having more flow in your life, being able to enjoy the things you already enjoy doing even more so. The guided meditations are a nice way to get into this. And we can talk about how to actually, build the practice. So Brenda, you mentioned Insight Timer. It's a great app. I would say the first step in building a practice is figuring out your why. What attracts you to mindfulness? What is it that it could give you that really would be transformative for you? And then you start with a how. So the Insight Timer, there's an app called 10% Happier. There's an app called Waking Up, and Headspace is another app as well. There's quite a few apps out there. Those four we both recommend, and I know I use them daily, not each one daily, but I go in between because it makes it simple. I mean, it's just follow along. It times it for you, and it's just easy. The easier you make this, the more of a habit it will come. So if it's, if you have a timer on your phone, you get a notification, oh, time to meditate. You don't have to plan every day. It just like brushing your teeth, you don't, oh, what time am I going to brush my teeth today? You wake up, you just do it, So I like the apps for that reason. If you're not into apps, no worries. You can do even an unguided if you want to just set a timer and you want sort of just to be able to declutter. I've done that as well, where I ended up doing about 30 to 40 minute unguided meditations. Just set a timer and just follow the breath or notice whatever comes up for me today. But this is the skill building part of mindfulness, of the practice, where again, it's called practice for a reason. It's an ongoing skill. The same way no one is ever going to do a workout webinar or a physical fitness webinar where you do this one workout and you're set for life. It's about building the routine, building the practice. People go to the gym every day to work on their bodies. You can sit down every day and practice a little bit of mindfulness to work on your mind, to work on the whole sort of complete part of your life. So I mean, the easiest, if I break down the steps again, just to really hammer it home, finding out your why. So a lot of information now about mindfulness, and we've given a lot of examples, and maybe there's areas in your life where you might find it could be useful, or there's other people in your life who you think might benefit from it. Find out that why. Okay, step one. Step two, figure out how to make time for it. So either putting it in your calendar, whatever works for you in incorporating something into your lifestyle. For me, I'm very, analytical, and I put it in my calendar on my phone. I have a paper one and set time aside. That works for me. Maybe it doesn't work for you. Maybe it's 1 minute a day. That's fine. If you find something that works for you, why you want to do practice mindfulness, and you have a method of doing it that actually works for you, that's exactly what's going to be needed to put in place to have this practice work for you and allow you to focus for longer, to enjoy the things you enjoy doing more, to have an increased concentration, to not get overly preoccupied with worry or obsessing about the past. So it's a two-step process like that. Easy as that.
Easy as that.
Easy as that.
So I want to talk just quickly about flow and creativity. So you'll often hear about artists or musicians that just get into this flow state, and it's about being so immersed in whatever you're doing that they almost lose focus on everything around them. And I actually experienced that myself. So I'm not an artist, I'm not a musician, but I was working on a project about 4 years ago, and I was doing a lot of writing, and it wasn't creative writing. It wasn't legal writing, but it was adjacent to legal writing. So it was very detailed. It was very, this paragraph needed to match what I said in that paragraph, and that paragraph needed to match what was said 2 chapters away. And so there was a lot of, like I said, legal adjacent kind of writing that I was doing. And it isn't my forte. It isn't something that I really had a burning desire to do. It was a piece of work that fell to me at work because I at least had a small amount of experience in doing that body of work compared to the rest of the people on the team that I was working on. And I discovered very quickly that if I turned on my meditation music, just some background white noise in the vicinity where I was working, I actually would put my headphones in, And I would find that I would get into this flow state, even writing something as technical and legally intense as say a legal contract that you might be writing. I found that I got myself into this flow state, and my husband would laugh. He would say, "You're just in the zone." And I'd be working on this thing for 4 or 5 hours straight and go, "Oh, I'm hungry. I should go and eat now." And so my brain has been conditioned to listen to the meditation music and just slow down and be quiet. And so you get this hyper focus on the activity that you're doing. So for me, it was a light bulb moment of how I had spent years kind of conditioning my brain, strengthening that muscle, and I could take on this task that was not something I was overly excited about doing, but I became very focused and very focused, and my ability to achieve great amounts of work in a very short period of time. Like I could literally write for 5 hours and achieve what it would take someone else, a week to do, because I was just in this flow state and my mind was clicking on all cylinders, and it was really powerful. So flow and creativity are another powerful benefit of mindfulness. And it doesn't have to be that you take on this task that's something you didn't want to do. What if you could harness that kind of energy and put it into something that you're really passionate about? So if it's maybe educating the world about being a vegan, or what if it's what about environmental issues, or what about child poverty? What if you harnessed that energy that you can gain through a mindfulness practice and focused it on something that you're really passionate about? Imagine how much more powerful your outcome and your results would be. Because I was fascinated on how much I was able to achieve when I really got into this flow state.
Mm. Yeah, I think about mindfulness training and the ability to be present and stay mindful is like having all of the positive effects of Adderall and increased concentration and focus without ever having to take the drug.
That's right.
Yeah, very cool. So I think again we've explained quite a bit, and as we get kind of towards the end of this webinar and of this presentation, we both really want you to have some takeaways, some actual tangible actions you can do to start to implement a practice, right? The apps, as we've said, are an easy way to get started, with guided meditations. There's notifications that will ring on your phone. You can set them to ring on your phone to remind you when to meditate, and you can set the time as well, whether it's 1 minute or 1 hour, right? You can set that. Again, I recommend just simplest is
I think we might have lost you, Kyle. So Kyle, I don't know if you can hear me, but we can't hear you anymore. So I'm,
okay.
Oh, there you're back.
Oh, back now?
Yeah.
There we go. Well, speaking of distractions, I'll bring us back home. Again, I just want to reiterate the two-step process there. Really understanding the why. What is it about mindfulness that would be a benefit to your life? If that's increased patience or less reactivity with anger or sadness or anxiety, or more gratitude, whatever that is. And then whatever works for you to actually make this a practice. So I recommend just take 7 days, little 7-day challenge we can put to you here. For the next 7 days, after you've uncovered what would be useful and that why of mindfulness for yourself, set a number, whether it's 5 minutes, 1 minute, 1 hour, whatever it is. And you can play around with this number over these 7 days. But take this 7-day challenge, just set it out for the next 7 days. Try setting a mindfulness practice, and you can find guided meditations on YouTube, or you can use the app, or just set a timer on your phone and just track the breath, like the techniques Brenda walked us through before. See what you notice over these next 7 days, and then check back in on day 7. And two things will happen. You'll already have built the mindfulness practice into part of your routine, into part of your habit, and you can carry that on as you continue. You'll also, even without trying, have strengthened that task positive network I was referring to earlier, right? The ability to focus, the ability to narrow attention, to not be so reactive to any emotion that pops up. Even over those 7 days, you'll have strengthened that. So see what you notice over those 7 days, check back in on day 7, and go from there. Easiest way to get started in a practice and to integrate it into your life. That's the way I started, and here I am 3.5 years later. We also have, and we'll figure out how to maybe send a slide or send a note of all the resources we've talked about today, which I love reading about and soaking in more information, but also the resources with the actual techniques and different mindfulness practices, different meditations. So look, there's a wealth of knowledge, there's a wealth of information and opportunities. Pick whatever works for you. Whatever you hear today that doesn't resonate for you, okay, throw it aside. Who cares? We're not going to be offended. Anything that doesn't vibe with you, toss aside. Anything that does stick with you, hold on to that and use that to get started.
The key is getting started.
Yeah.
Cool. So I wanted to just pause here for a minute, and we will definitely be taking questions from folks even after the webinar is done and as they're listening to the replay. But I really wanted to just say thanks to everybody. Thanks to those of you who joined us live, and thanks to those of you who are listening on the replay. We know that mindfulness has had such a powerful benefit in our lives. But if you're like Kyle just said, challenge yourself for 7 days, and if you have some experiences out of that you want to share with us, I know we're both we love to hear those stories and would love to chat with you more about it if you have any questions. I want to do 2 things now, Kyle. One is I know that we both have some things coming up that I'd like to share with the listeners, and then I want to also leave them with the ways to contact us after the webinar or after they listen to the replay. So just because you joined us for this webinar doesn't mean that's the end of it. I personally want to be there for you even beyond this. So I want to leave you with what's happening next for me and how to get a hold of me. And I know Kyle is the same. So Kyle, why don't you start? I know you have a workshop coming up. Talk a little bit about that, and then share with them how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah. So I have it's actually combining yoga and meditation, and I'll be running that on November 16th with a colleague of mine who's a certified yoga instructor. And that's going to be here in Vancouver. So I live out on the West Coast here, just east of downtown Vancouver, and it'll be an hour of yoga and an hour of meditation after, which we're really excited about, actually. And we've gotten quite a bit of buzz around, and already pretty much filled up, which is, I guess, just speaks again to how important this stuff is for people. But that's coming up, as I said, November 16th. And I mentioned earlier as well, I have my own coaching practice called Kyle Shea Coaching. You can reach me through my website, just kylesheacoaching.com, all one word. Shea is spelled S-H-E-A. Again, I'll link this so you have the information. But one of the foundations of any work that I do with clients and connecting them with anything they would create for their lives, or creating lasting fulfillment or meaningful relationships, or meaningful achievement in their lives, it all comes back to mindfulness. I mean, one of the first things we look at when I work with clients is their sleep, their nutrition, and their ability to focus, or their ability to be present. Not in a judgmental way, but just to sort of get a lay of the land. And those are the areas that I work with people to really create whatever is important for them in their lives, to have their values lived out in their lives in a meaningful way, and so that they can impact the world as a result. So the website, easiest way to reach me, or at my email, which is info@kylesheacoaching.com. I'll even leave my number as well if you want to just shoot me a text, give me a call. Whatever is easiest. I'm always open for conversations, and the easiest way is to go from there.
And I would just say to those who are listening live and those who are listening to the replay, Kyle mentioned this at the beginning, but we met about a year ago in a course that we were taking together, and I have had some really interesting conversations with him throughout that course. And so I would say with absolute confidence that if you want to work with Kyle and you want to attend any of his workshops or his coaching sessions, I know that I benefited from just having some conversations with him. So I know that you will as well too. So I want to take just a couple more minutes and talk about two things that I have coming up that I'm really kind of excited about. I have a 6-week online Worthy program. So I've mentioned my Worthy programs before. Worthy is an acronym that stands for, the W stands for wake up, the O stands for own your power, the R stands for relate with love, T stands for trust self and source, H stands for honor your past, and then Y is yes to life. And so over the course of 6 weeks, I'll be sharing some information related to each one of those steps in the Worthy program. And I run that program from time to time, but I have one coming up, and I think it launches later in November. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me. I am also offering it at a reduced rate right now, especially for folks who are listening to this. So it's normally $4.97, and if you're listening to this and you want to contact me, I'm offering it for $2.97. And the other thing that happened just today, and I'm so excited about it, is I have created a member box. So it is a box that you can register for. I believe it's $47, and it would be mailed to your home, and it would be literally like getting a little gift basket in the mail. So it's going to come with a whole bunch of really interesting products and things that I love, and so you can get those delivered to you on a monthly basis. And if you want some more information about that, you can contact me. The best way to get a hold of me, I have a website, and it's BrendaWaltonInspires.com. And if you want to email me like Kyle, it's just info@BrendaWaltonInspires.com. So just wanted to share those few things with you, especially if folks are wanting to ask us more questions or reach out to us or want to follow some of the work that we're doing. We thought we'd close with that. And again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving us your time. And we look forward, even when we post this video, I'll share the replay with folks when we post it. If you want to ask questions in the comment boxes on YouTube, that's fine. We'll get back to you. Join us on Facebook, whatever that might look like for you. Just go ahead and reach out to us if you have questions. Kyle, did you have any final thoughts before we close?
No, nothing but gratitude as well, as you touched on. Thank you for showing up here and for having the curiosity to see what mindfulness can be, and more importantly, and bigger picture than that, what is it like and what it can be like to have your life work for you, to be enjoyable, and to be a positive force for other people and for yourself. So yes, thank you, and look forward to hearing from you. And thank you
Okay.
to you as well, Brenda. Yeah, you know,
Okay.
it's fun to do this together, and to continue our journey as we share more together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. And like I said, reach out if you have more questions to us. I'm going to stop the recording now.